For coming today to our Board of Trustees meeting on July 25th. If we could first start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first, we'll start with public comment. And did you want to?
Well, I just wanted to make a note that we do have a couple of public officials that are here with us today. And as usual, we do invite them to give us updates on government activities. And so prior to getting into public comment, if our elected officials want to make a comment about activities in their governmental level, that'd be nice.
Well, I didn't want to go after our special guest, so I thought I'd kind of sneak in before Marcia Gershenson, one of your county commissioners. I have two announcements. One is about an exciting new program that the county has funded, and it's Education Navigators. And we learned that there are over 360,000 residents in southeastern Michigan that have some college but haven't graduated. So in order to boost up our numbers, we have assigned these navigators, and they're at OCC, OU, Baker, and several of the Michigan Works offices, and other locations too. And all the information is available on our website, oakgov.com. So if you know anybody that is thinking about going back to school, I personally know how intimidating it was to go through the paperwork, not to know who to talk to get some information about financial aid. I am very excited about this program, and we want to raise Michigan's numbers for college grads or any kind of secondary education. And then I also wanted to tout our Oakland County Treasurer, Robert Wittenberg, who's holding the first virtual tax foreclosed treasures property auction with over 300 properties, and it's going to be on August 12th. First time it's been virtual. New bidders have to register for an account, and advanced bidding has already started. So you can go in there, put your bid in, and the final bidding will be on August 12th. And again, if you want any more information, I'd recommend you go to our outstanding website, oakgov.com, and find information about both these programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Do you want to come on up?
Well, good evening to the esteemed Bloomfield Township Board, our esteemed supervisor, and a very incredible member of the county commission here in Oakland County. Thank you so much for your leadership in this community and in this region. And also, don't allow me to skip over our clerk and our attorney and our treasurer who work equally as hard, in this fine gentleman who's managing digital operations, which I think you probably never thought you'd be so busy or stretched in the last couple of years, but thank you for making the township go round. I'm Congresswoman Haley Stevens. I'm just delighted to be with you all here this evening as the Congresswoman for Michigan's 11th District. These last couple of years in particular have brought on a lot of cross-functionality between my role and all of your roles. In particular, as we've been managing a pandemic, very pleased to remind, I guess, about the Rescue Act funding that has come to the township, to the county as well. We're so thrilled to see how the county is utilizing the $300 million that came as part of the Rescue Act, and somewhat as a reminder of the unfinished business from the Recovery Act period of the 2009 recession. And one of the things that I seek to do as a member of Congress, in Washington with the colleagues who come from, all over the country, is I seek to brag about the place that we call home. And I get to brag about the place that we call home in part because I serve on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, the Committee of the Future in the Congress. And of course, as all of you know, in 2019, we recognized the the 50-year anniversary of the moon landing. And the question that we were asking in the Congress, or that I was asking, was what's the moonshot of the next 50 years? And I personally believe that's seething through the place that we call home, particularly with the transformations that we're seeing with the automobile. No short of many people connected to the automotive industry call Bloomfield Township and Oakland County home. And if you look, we are still and very much squarely a global destination, not only for international business, but for innovation, research and development, and the technologies of the future. And a pandemic didn't stop us, right? A pandemic didn't stop us from continuing to produce electric vehicle technology and automation technology and ushering in the future. And so that is one of my commitments to this region as I do the work in the Congress, and as we're right on the heels of passing the CHIPS Act, which is a very pronounced bill about our supply chain security, particularly for the microchips. We're producing these cars, but too many are sitting on the lot waiting for their microchip. Holy smokes, that microchip that we innovated in the United States of America, but then allowed to be produced overseas. We want to see that come back here to Michigan. We want to beget the investments in our workforce. CHIPS is, if we're going to invest in CHIPS, it's an investment in the Michigan workforce. It's an investment in Michigan jobs, in part because our entire auto industry is hanging on the balance of this supply chain disruption that was really quite exposed during the pandemic. And so you're hearing it from your friend in the Congress here at the Bloomfield Township meeting first, that the CHIPS Act will pass this week. That is my presumption, and that is the goal, that we will see the CHIPS Act pass this week. We had the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, in Michigan on Friday in Taylor at the UAW with the workforce. It was, I think, her last public event on CHIPS before its passage, and she came here to Michigan as the Speaker of the House, which is really quite a big deal. But allow me to get local again for a minute, because not only do we have a Rescue Act and certainly significant legislation coming down that will have impacts to our region, but what this area represents and what Bloomfield Township represents, in particular under the leadership of your township supervisor, Danny Walsh, is also a vision of the future. And I'm so pleased to see here, our very humble but just remarkable fire chief, Mr. John Leroy. Thank you for joining us. It was such a pleasure to be with you and your amazing team just a couple of weeks ago as the subcommittee chair of research and technology. I oversee the fire safety grant process as we appropriate those dollars through the Congress, and so SAFER and AFG wards. And we all know our fire department wants the best technology as well. You have the best workforce, you have the most trained workforce, and you certainly spoiled me by giving me your time and also some great history lessons. So I really want to take a minute to applaud you, and again, thank you and your entire department for your leadership. I've, of course, since bragged about that visit. But also, if we think about fire and police, the innovation that was really born out here in Bloomfield Township with our core responder program to say, hey, we've got a certain number of police calls that come in that are really social work calls, that really beget the need of a social worker. And so Bloomfield Township, Birmingham, and Auburn Hills joined together to ask for dollars, which I was pleased to champion and request and get to have a social worker in the police departments of those three communities, yours included, including transportation dollars. And that program is in this social worker initiative, in these times that we're in, where it feels like so much is hitting us at any time, and we keep asking ourselves, you're all dedicated government, how do we make government work better for people, right? How do we make the institution of which we are elected to serve in work better for people? I know, our clerk is bearing that responsibility as it's always seems to be an election year. But all of you as, and the township board and certainly our township supervisor, and this is a best practice with what we have done with the investment in our police here in Bloomfield Township, Auburn Hills, and Birmingham by being able to hire social workers and receive some federal funds. We're obviously not paying for all of it, but we're happy to meet you where you are. We're also happy to meet you where you are because I say this to people as an Oakland County representative, we certainly pay our fair share of federal taxes. It'd be nice to see some of them come back to our community, the effective utilization of the taxpayer dollar for outcomes. This is an outcome. And I'd like you all to know that other communities in Michigan are now looking at your best practice and saying, how do we get a piece of that? How do we do that? And so I really encourage the storytelling out of the core program. I really absolutely encourage the storytelling and the success of the program, in part because, and the social workers themselves, what an honorable and incredible profession. We certainly boast some great social work programs here in Michigan for those who are in studies, and those educational outcomes have a real impact in our community. And so not only are you enabling the workforce to shine, you are enabling your community to shine. Our county commissioner, Marcia Gershenson, just returned from the National Association of County Organizations, again, on the national stage as part of the Oakland County Commission. These are the nuggets that we want to give to our county commission as well, so that it's not only about bragging, but it's about best practices. And so if you think about it, that's everything that Oakland County represents. And so I like I said, you've heard it from me here first about what's to come this week as Congress stands on the heels of what is sometimes called our August work period, the time where we're really able to be home in our districts before the kids go back to schools, getting an understanding of what's ticking in the community, making sure that we're taking back to Washington what's needed, what's working, and sometimes, right, listening in a way that sometimes we don't get if it's just for a couple days home here and there. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm really reminded in these times, I share this quote often, I find myself sharing this quote often because it's such a good one, and it reminds me of the work that all of you are a part of alongside me. And it's a Truman quote, and he said, America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, brazen determination, and the willingness to do the job at hand. And that, my friends, is all of you. So thank you for your service to Bloomfield Township. Thank you for having me here tonight. And let us do this again sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's going to be a hard one to follow. Do we have anyone else here for public comment? Okay, then we will go ahead and close public comment. Thank you very much. Next, we have on our agenda to approve the board minutes of July 11th. We all had a chance to look those over. Unless there's any changes or suggestions, I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Trustee Barnett, support by Trustee Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. Next is the introduction of Carrie Lazat. She's our newly appointed Director of Cable and Community Relations, and I am proud to do this introduction. One of the things that when I came on board that I really wanted to do was increase, and I know it's not just myself, actually all 7 of us, that was something that is very important, is transparency, communication. Especially, we're doing all these great things and nobody knows about it. And that's frustrating as a resident to find out if we have a core program and not even know about it. So one of the things that I spent a lot of time looking for was this director position. I interviewed, or I had over 40 applications. I narrowed it down to 10 people that interviewed on Zoom a couple times each. narrowed that down to 4 people that came in for in-person interviews, narrowed that down to 3 that went through panel interviews. So it was a few months, probably about 2.5 months from start to finish. And I did see that the panel all agreed that Carrie was our best choice, and so did the peer review and myself. Carrie has a very wide range of background. She has marketing doing video and productions for Comerica for over 10 years, Detroit Public Television. I believe you created your own movie film and department there. And we also was, I believe, the American Sign Language database that you helped create, which is amazing to help with communication even further. And it was basically her ability to communicate to the same message to different people in different ways so they receive it. Sometimes the hardest thing with communication is you say something, you think somebody understands it, and then you realize nobody understood what you're talking about. Or we create something for a cable viewer, which is very different than a YouTube viewer, which is very different than an in-person. So Carrie was tasked with her beginning at the end of June to get out a lot of things, all within a quick time, and restructure the department and hire new people. So she's been, speaking of the fire department, she's been doing a bit of drinking through the fire hose lately. So we wanted to take time to introduce her to the board, give you a chance to talk to her, learn a little bit more about her, ask some questions, and tell us about yourself and what you've seen in the last few. But take it away.
Wow, thanks for that introduction, and really thank you all for hiring me. I really feel like I've come full circle because I grew up in Dearborn at a PEG station. Some of the first video production I ever did was at the local cable station. We made like an MTV, it was the late 80s, we did an MTV type show, and many of the people that I went to school with at that time have continued into the industry and have gone on to amazing things, which I feel like I've now gone on to an amazing thing too, landing here at Bloomfield Township. I'm a Spartan, so you should know that about me. Although I'm not super tied to sports, but I still, I do believe great. She didn't hold it against me, thank goodness.
She's not Ohio State. So okay.
I spent some time making movies, and then I landed at Comerica, where I was able to engage with the business community in a way that I never imagined. So it was a really interesting time. I would never quite fit in. I was always kind of the black sheep of the family, but it was still a really wonderful learning experience. And I left at the same time that Comerica was moving their headquarters to Dallas, and started my own production company where I was really doing more of the community-based content that I really always wanted to do when the film incentive came into town. So one of my greatest, I guess, I don't know if it was accomplishments, but I guess one of the most fun things I did to lead me to this point was Mayor Duggan's re-election campaign in 2017. That was kind of my introduction into government, but because I was the production company, I didn't always know what was going on. So they were making decisions, and I would be waiting for approvals and things. And now I feel like I'm on the inside, so now at least I know some of the decision-making process that's going into making things happen, as we are now with the millage education that we're pulling together. I learned a lot in 2 weeks about millages. I didn't really have a good idea what that was when I started, and now hopefully I can articulate and explain that to people. And the priorities going forward, I think, what you were saying about making communication available to people wherever they are, that's the first phase, is to take all the good content that we've already been producing and making it so that everybody can see it. So whether it's in a newsletter, an e-newsletter, on social media, that's kind of merging all of those things so that everybody is seeing the same information, and hopefully getting to a place where we can actually bring people together again and do live events and things like open houses that used to happen prior to COVID. Phase 2 was really going to be looking at, we have so many extraordinary resources in this community, from the amazing award-winning library. My mother is a She was an elementary school librarian, so that has a special place for me. Libraries have always been really special. That's the most amazing library ever. The farm, the nature center, the safety pass. There's so many wonderful stories to tell here, and I think getting back to Haley's point about storytelling, all of the stories have local Michigan roots. My husband's from Pennsylvania, and I tell him anytime some big local story breaks, I'm like, watch and see what the Michigan connection is, because there's always one there. Phase 3, I think, is going to be opening up our studio, and really beyond producing studio productions, we're going to be making more content that people want to produce, that, people are wanting to consume and deliver content in different ways. And how can we grow the department to do that and provide this incredible resource for our community? Do you have any questions for me?
Anybody want to start?
Not a question, but it goes along with what you had said, and Haley, what you had said. I agree. The stories here are phenomenal, and they need to be told, and I'm so glad that you become part of Bloomfield Township and part of the team, because we all have a great story. We offer so much here, but story needs to get out, and so I'm so pleased that you're part of being that storyteller.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can tell you, I appreciate that you are a quick study because especially right now when we're talking about millages, we are obligated to inform, but you can only inform, you cannot coerce. So I will say that you have done an amazing job at fulfilling our duty of informing and letting people make their own decisions, but giving people the opportunity to even know what's going on. And you made a quick impact on that one because we've had quite a response. So
Excellent. Thank you
a
for
lot
that
to
feedback.
take in.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming. Welcome. We had a chance to chat before the meeting and shared a little common history, and I think you're going to be a wonderful addition, and we appreciate you joining our township. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing all the cool things you're going to do.
And thank you also to Treasurer Keeps and Clerk Brooke for being part of the panel. We have some panelists out there. Darren's here and others, but thank you for your time also and being involved. Great. Thank you. See, it's not so bad the first time.
I'll be as good as her eventually.
Nice job. So, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the results of the audit from the Minimum Assessing Requirements, AMAR, and this will be presented by Darren Kratz of Team Perfection, is what I'm now calling you all.
Thank you for your time tonight. I do want to just kind of give you a little background on what the AMR is and kind of what it means for us in the assessing profession. I know it's very thrilling to most everybody here, but
Should we bring up
In
Team
2000
Perfection? Do you want to bring Team Perfection?
oh, I will. Yeah, I will.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
In 2015, the State Tax Commission decided that there were too many non-uniform things going on in the assessing industry, so they created what they phrased the AMAR. They coined it the AMAR, which is the Audit of Minimum Assessing Requirements. So this year was our lucky year in Oakland County, and they do these every 5 years, but this year was our year. And what they do is they contract with a company called TMA, Tax Management Associates, and they basically go through, I know they say it's a minimum requirements, but it's a pretty extensive list of things that they require from us, and they require them to be done in such a way that it's, you pass or you fail and that kind of thing. So one of the things that they do, they review is our land values to make sure we're calculating those correctly, our economic condition factors, our personal property records. A couple of the things, I think a couple months ago I was here in front of you guys for our hardship guidelines and so forth. So they review those, they review the veterans exemptions. As far as the hardships go, they make sure that we're sticking to our guidelines, we're not deviating, and then we're also following the State Tax Commission's rules and regulations on that. And then not only that, I think one of the more difficult things, because they're changing all the time, is whether or not we're following the State Tax Commission bulletins and their publications and their guidances and things, because they change all the time, and to keep on top of those is pretty difficult. So what they do after they review all these things is they determine whether or not your community is in substantial compliance or what they refer to as substantial non-compliance. If you're in non-compliance, they give you the opportunity to correct it. If you don't correct it within the required time frame, which is usually about a year, or if they don't accept your action plan on how you're going to correct these things, the State Tax Commission actually has the ability to seize your assessment roll, which if they do that, they're not going to give it back to you easily, and it's going to cost probably a community like Bloomfield Township, I would say several $100,000 to get it back. So as far as I'm concerned, and my staff is concerned, this is big news for us. I know most folks don't know what assessors do or even how we do what we do, but this is big news for us. And so with that, I'm pleased to tell you that we received a perfect score, both us and Sylvan Lake. So we do Sylvan Lakes as well. So we're not just only doing one; we're doing two communities. So. For us, that's a big deal. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you to my staff, because without these guys, it'd be very, very difficult to get a perfect score on your own. So I guess what I'd like to have them do is come up here when I introduce them. Jim's not here tonight. Jim Allen is my appraiser too. He's had a family emergency, so he's not going to be in for a while. But Jim's been with the township for 23 years. He's a Michigan Advanced Assessing Officer, so level 3. He's been one of the cornerstones in my office for years and years and years. He's also the assessor for Sylvan Lake, so Jim handles all of Sylvan Lake stuff for us, and so for him to get a perfect score on his review as well was big for us. So Kathy Bono is an appraiser 1. She's been here with the township for 19 years. Michigan, Kathy's a level 2, a Michigan Certified Assessing Officer. Kathy has gained a lot of experience in her time here, and she does my personal property for me, which is on this AMR, it was a big area that they were looking at, so something that they really focused on this time around. So I wanted to thank Kathy for that. I mean, that work that she does on personal property is it's not easy. You're chasing your tail quite often. Jennifer Worthman is she's my appraiser 1. She's got her MAAO, so Michigan Advanced Assessing Officer license. Jen came from West Bloomfield Township. She's been here about 8 months, and she has absolutely hit the ground running, and big asset to our department. Lastly here, Christy Thompson. Most of you may know Christy from our building department. Christy's been with the township for 19 years. She's an MCAO, which is a Michigan Certified Assessing Officer. She's only been in our department for about 8 months, and is proving herself very, very quickly. I can look at a couple of Christy's sketches that she does on the computer, and I walk past her and I'm like, oh boy, like that's a little beyond even my scope of expertise in that. So I'd like to thank you 3 ladies and Jim for all your hard work and dedication to the township and to our department. So I don't know if a round of applause is in. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Thank you all.
Yeah, great work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Nice job.
Thank you for your time. Have
See
a
you
good night.
next year again, I'm sure.
Great. Next on the agenda, we have the presentation of the fire department's 2021 annual report. We have Chief Leroy. I've heard you have some jokes this time embedded, some dancing. Not out of your personality scope at all.
No, not at all. So we go up here.
and him.
First and foremost, I'd like to apologize for the delay in this annual report with some unforeseen circumstances this past spring led to this delay. So we just finally got it wrapped up and completed. I wanted to bring it to you guys as quickly as we could. The fire department this year obviously had a busier year than in 2020 was. The pandemic, you'll see in the numbers, slowed our responses down a little bit, but they came back second half of 2021 and really rebounded to levels that were pre-pandemic levels. Our current organizational chart is myself and the assistant chief at the top. We have one administrative assistant, and then the fire marshal oversees 2 fire inspectors. The EMS captain runs the EMS division, and then we have 3 battalion chiefs that run 18 or 17 other personnel each in a 24/7, 365-day operation. Our fire stations are located at, Station 1 is here on the township grounds campus. Station 2 is located on the east side of the township on Westview, which runs between Squirrel and Adams. And Station 3 is located roughly at Maple and Telegraph, next to the Maple Theater. And Station 4 is in the north end up at Square Lake and Franklin area. The stations are divided mainly by response areas, not by populations, not by anything like that. You'll see not all the stations are even in the number of runs that they go on, but there's a reason behind that. Last year, Station 1 normally has the least number of calls, but that's because Station 1's area, which is here at Long Lake and Telegraph area, has more lakes, bigger or less population density than the other areas do. Station 3's area, which is typically the most busiest area in the township, is a more densely populated area at the south end of the township, and their rescue is very busy, and it has a couple of senior living centers in that area as well. Really what's changed in the last few years is an interesting dynamic is Station 2's area went from being the slowest probably 20 years ago when I hired in here to the second busiest now. And it's almost, on days can compete with Station 3. One of the big number drivers in that area is nursing home facility at Adams and Big Beaver, which is a huge user of the services. But that area has seen growth with a couple of subdivisions and also just more and more incidents. Last year, the fire incidents were we're still up. We had some big drivers in weather incidents last year as well with some storms, so it drove the numbers up. And then EMS incidents came back very quickly back to pre-pandemic levels. So last year you can see we've had a steady increase since 1989, started in 1989 at 2,500 and plus calls. Steadily increased over the last 30 years, and then now you'll see the dip there by 600 calls in 2020, which you wouldn't think in the middle of a pandemic, but people weren't calling for service. And then last year it came roaring back to the pre-pandemic levels, right where they were the previous years. So this was the month-to-month. I thought it was pretty interesting to show. So we started out the year, we were still down last year. Significant decreases from the year before. But right around April, whenever the vaccine access came out and more people started going back to living their lives, after April, it was a significant increase every single month over the previous year. And that was really a huge driver in the second half of the year, really drove up the numbers because we started out the year way down from the previous year. And I thought this was also interesting to show. This is a time of day, so over the course of the year, when the incidents occurred. So you'll really see that our only really, and it's not slow time, but slower time, it starts at about midnight and only goes until about 6 in the morning. And then the alarm clock goes off at 6 o'clock in the morning and the number of emergency incidents increase throughout the day, and they really go all the way through until about 10 o'clock at night and really significantly start reducing right around 11, 12 o'clock at night. But they're steady throughout the year all day long. There's no real significant downtime where they're not doing something, some sort of emergency incident in Bloomfield Township. And then I broke down the last 3 years of some of the incidents, and what we've seen is we've seen an increase in fires in Bloomfield since COVID started, and a real big increase in all types of fires. A building fire is considered, it's not a building fire until it affects the structure of the building. Then it's called a building fire. So if it's just a fire in the kitchen on the stove, that's not a building fire. So that's really where we're seeing the increases is in cooking fires and things, the smaller type of fires that don't get to they don't become a building or structure fire until they really take seat in the home. But those are the drivers that we're seeing. So COVID, I mean, in 2020 and then 2021, the trend continued. We're up on our number of fires for the year. Last year, another big driver was we had a lot of weather incidents. So we had almost double the number of power line issues last year as opposed to previous years. And I was even looking back at the previous years before this. We're normally right around 150 wire runs a year, and last year it just, with the rain, the storms that happened in June, was a significant driver to the power line and our number of instances throughout the year. And then what we're also seeing is with the citizen assists that we're seeing a steady increase in the citizen assists as our community ages and gets older. Those are the type of calls that we go on for people that have fallen that are injured, assist up, that don't need to go to the hospital, but they need our services, and we happily provide them. But we've seen a steady increase in the number of citizen assists that we've been going on over the previous years, and it's attributed to the age of the community. So last year, the big change that we saw was, and you wouldn't have thought it during a pandemic, but we actually saw a slowdown in our number of transports in 2020. And then in 2021, people weren't as scared to go to the hospital. They weren't as scared of seeking that help that they were in the previous year. So we actually had 386 more transports last year than we did the previous year. And that is, I mean, that's over one a day, and that's significant for our 3 rescues. And then what that also showed, this is our transporting revenue that we bring in. There was a steep decline in March of 2020. It went by more than almost 2/3, and then it never really recovered throughout the year. The monthly average stayed down in the low 60,000s and even dipped a few times. And then as the number of calls increased, what we see here is we've seen a steady increase up. The sawtooth pattern there is mainly attributed to when the money hits the accounts for the year, but the monthly averages jumped back up to the over $80,000 a month, which is where we were pre-pandemic levels. And we anticipate roughly $1 million a year towards the township in revenue for our EMS transporting, and we were able to last year get back to that from our reductions that we saw the year before. So, I mean, with both these EMS incidents really cut down in 2020, jumped back up in 2021. Another key driver that we're seeing is the vehicle accidents. You know, people weren't traveling, there was less traffic on the road. We saw a lot of people not going to work, and we've seen a huge increase in vehicle accidents in 2021 and into 2022 this year. And then this one is always a big, you don't realize how much is occurring here, but in Bloomfield Township, 41% of the time, we're on one or more incidents at the same time. Those are, you know, we can handle up to about 3 incidents, 4 incidents. We break trucks away, we manage them the best that we can. Anything over that, that's when we're relying on our mutual aid partners when they're having like that at the same time. A lot of times, the 6 and 7 incidents occurring at the same time, those are when we have the storms roll through. We have something big going on that it takes a lot of time to clear calls, and we have units all over the township. So those are mainly weather-related incidents, but there are times when we have 7 medicals occurring at one time. It's pretty significant how often we have overlap with our stations being deployed in different areas of the township. And our stations don't stay in the same area. Station 3 may go to Station 2's area on the east side, and when we get busy, they will be all over the place. And then, with that being said, with as busy as they are, we couldn't do it without our mutual aid partners and our Oakway Mutual Aid Association. This group of 10 fire departments is really instrumental in southeast Michigan. We all hopefully get busy at different times, so we have that ability to help each other and give that assistance. And in Bloomfield Township, we are truly a mutual aid group we provide it mutually. We give mutual aid as much as we receive it. So it really is a balance here, as opposed to some other places that get a lot more than they give. So some future concerns are what we're seeing and some trends. We're starting to see a rise in lithium battery fires. You don't really see that. The cars, the charging stations, lithium batteries are great under optimum conditions. It's when they are damaged in a vehicle accident, or they're damaged in the manufacturing process and you don't know it, and over time they degrade. What we're seeing with these type of fires, we're having a lot of garbage truck fires. People are throwing those batteries away. Instead of recycling them, they get damaged and they catch fire in the back of a garbage truck. We've had several instances of that over the last year. And what's different about these batteries is they burn so hot that they require so much more water to put out. It's very resource driven when we have to deal with these type of batteries. So there's going to have to be an education component going forward as a society throughout the United States as these become more and more prevalent. We're seeing a rise in cooking fires, and that's just more and more people are home. Working from home, I think a lot of it is it's attributing, they're working from home, they're doing their cooking, their different projects in between meetings and things, they get distracted, and we're having some of these kitchen type fires that just, they get back into their projects, and then we have a fire related to it because they forgot that they started something before. We're seeing a rise in electrical fires. We've had several fires this year, which you don't really think of, but the bath fan in your bathroom. They don't get cleaned out over time. The ducts get very dirty. The motor gets dirty. It begins to overheat. And what's happening is when these fans start to burn, they're in the attic, or they're burning above the smoke detectors. You don't know you have a problem until either the neighbor calls or something happens before you see it. The biggest thing with those is when they come in to clean your ducts, make sure they clean your ducting for your bath fans as well. Motor vehicle accidents, we're seeing a huge increase in motor vehicle accidents. This is due to, during the pandemic, with less traffic on the road, people started driving faster. They're still driving faster. They're more distracted, and almost like common courtesy has went out the window, and people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and they're causing more and more accidents. It's not atypical to be every red light I sit at, somebody goes through a red light on a daily basis when you're sitting there because either they don't want to stop or they can't be bothered to stop. And then one of the other key things that we're seeing here is ambulance shortages. We don't have it here in Bloomfield Township with our rescues. We're full staff at this point. But neighboring communities are seeing ambulance shortages, and they're calling on resources from other areas to come in, and they need help. And with our licensing agreement, we have to provide the help from the state of Michigan says, and Oakland County says we have to. We're watching that, and then we've already taken steps into place to have those discussions if it keeps up. We've seen a decrease recently, but we are in the midst of a paramedic shortage and EMT shortage in the United States, and Michigan and Oakland County is no exception. I think it's going to keep happening, and more as more and more of these communities, their ambulance services are impacted. It's going to be an issue moving forward. We've identified it, we're watching it, and we'll just have to address it as it moves forward into the future. With that, I'd like to thank the Board of Trustees. I'd like to thank Lieutenant Bailey for assembling this, and firefighter Brad Woodhall for all of his work getting it into the PowerPoint and making sure that it flowed well and worked well. So with that, I would take any questions.
Any questions, Michael?
Thank you, Chief, and thank you to Lieutenant Bailey and Firefighter Woodhall. Thank you, first of all, for not including pictures of me in the at the Oakway fire ops.
When you hit me in the head
yeah,
with
okay.
the fire hose.
Okay.
We're still friends.
Yeah. So my question is, with the Oakway call, you said we equally give and take, right? So when we get called on an Oakway call, is that included in our calls for service?
Yes.
Okay. So our calls for service include when we get called somewhere else?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a sense as to what percentage of our calls that is?
I don't have, off the top of my head, I can run those numbers. The problem that we have in compiling those reports are firefighter, sometimes when we're working an emergency scene, our firefighters don't know when we got mutual aid. So we have to rely on the other departments pulling those numbers to come to Bloomfield Township, and vice versa. When we go to them, they call us and say, hey, did you guys come here, or how many times? So we have to run our numbers against it as well. So
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I don't want to cause any work. I'm just curious what percentage of our calls were. And, you know, I just think it's important that we recognize that 3%, by my calculation, of our calls occurred when there were more than 5 concurrent incidents. So whether we had 5 going on at the same time, 6 going on at the same time, 7 going on at the same time, 3%, so 166 by my math, were going at the same time, and even 4 incidents, you had another 200 and some. So I mean, it's a significant number, and I just want people to keep that in mind, especially in light of, you know, our vote next week, that we need to continue to support the staffing of the fire department. Because one thing you didn't include in here is the overtime numbers.
correct.
And can I not do that?
Well, you can inform.
I'm saying in light of the vote, we should think about it.
You cannot tell people how to vote.
I'm not telling people how to vote.
Okay.
I'm saying in light of the vote, we should think about it. That's all I'm saying.
I think the rule is that you can inform factually about what is the millage proposal, the process. The basis behind it is getting into an area that
Okay.
Yeah.
should be.
Well, I was just referencing the report that's in front of us.
And the only reason I've been careful is because
Yeah, I
everything
understand.
we've done, we have run.
I understand. I'm
through
just
also.
referencing in front of us that
Yeah.
we've got 3 to 6, 7% of our calls when we have more than 4 incidents. We only have, you know, so just something to think about.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I'm asking to kind of generalize now a little bit, but I don't have the data available, but you've got from experience the answer to this question, I'm sure. We have a lot of data about the number of incidents and how they grew so dramatically over the past decade. I'm curious to know more about, if you can add some color to this, about what goes into each of these things. I mean, each incident it's easy just to say, well, it was one incident. But, you know, how much time, is really involved in these things? How much transport? How many post-incident reports? I mean, each incident isn't just like, oh, incident,
Yeah.
whatever. You know, can you give me some more understanding of what all that means,
Sure.
based on different kinds of things?
Depending on the incident, a typical house fire in Bloomfield Township can take several hours. A large commercial fire like, Oakland Hills, days. We're very fortunate that here in Bloomfield, the hospitals are very close. So our turnaround times are relatively quick. We have 3 major hospitals within 6 miles of Bloomfield Township: Henry Ford West Bloomfield, actually 4. Henry Ford West Bloomfield, Beaumont Royal Oak, St. Joe's, and then McLaren in downtown Pontiac. It allows us to clear the hospitals relatively quickly. But a typical medical is you're looking from the time of dispatch to the time that they spend on scene, which can, depending on the type of incident, say 25 minutes on scene, another, 15 taking them to the hospital, and another 15 doing the paperwork at the hospital before they can go back in service. Each incident is upwards of an hour for a typical medical, plus or minus, but right around there. So all those calls, it really drives up the amount of time that they're out of service. Now, a lot of times, or most of the time, the crews have their radios on at the radio. Another fortunate thing that the hospitals are so close, it allows them to, if they have to, we have a certain amount of time that we have to get that report in. They can clear the hospital and take another call, and they're relatively close. So those types of calls are, and that's the main driver of service is the medicals. But so if you figure each one of them is about an hour, that's about an hour that they're out of service when they have a call.
And I would imagine also that you noted from the hourly time that there's a small window of downtime. Just help me understand. The vehicle isn't like ready to go like the Batmobile all the time. I imagine during the downtime is when they're actually now cleaning the vehicle, restocking the vehicle, preparing it for its next run.
The way it works is first thing in the morning, they check their truck out for the day and make sure the equipment's fully stocked. The equipment's in ready to service mode. The batteries are in, the life packs are in service. The stretchers are checked. They do a full check first thing in the morning. When they arrive at, then as they go on incidents at the hospital, one person is responsible for the patient care report, and then the other person at the hospital on a two-man crew or two-person crew is in charge of putting the supplies back in the truck, making sure when they leave the hospital, that truck is in service, ready to go for the next call. So, and they do that multiple times throughout the day.
Great, thank you. That's helpful.
I just want to say thank you so much. I know these reports take time, but it's really valuable information for us to see, and we know how hard you guys all work. And living here as long as I have, we really appreciate it. And I'm kind of excited because I get to do the fire ops this year, so I don't know what I'm in for, but
I'll tell you later.
I've heard the stories, but I'm excited and made my commitment, and that I'll be getting suited up for some equipment, and then I'll have an even better idea what you guys do. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Thank you.
And Carrie doesn't know this yet, but since we'll all have been trained at some point, we need to start picking on others. I'm thinking Jason from finance and Carrie from communications would be great for the next year. It's actually really fun. The one thing you pointed out that I was going to ask is about the ambulance shortage. So we do have some wonderful mutual aid partners where we help them, they help us. We do have some communities nearby who have opted to go with private ambulances, which means they can't share aid because they're not staffing those private ambulance enough. It did get a little out of hand from a couple of the local communities. Were we able to let them know that there would be cost recovery going forward if they didn't address their issues, or how do we word that so they knew we were serious?
A couple other communities that were involved in that let them know.
Okay.
We didn't, and then magically the number of incidents almost stopped.
Good.
We have our 1s and 2s occasionally, which is tolerable, but it's not a frequent occurrence anymore.
Okay.
We're prepared moving forward to under cost recovery to take a look at those things if it ramps back up again.
This is understandable. A community would want to save money, but we personally don't when it comes to our safety for our residents. And if our residents are affected by us having to take over others that chose not to, it did become a problem. So I'm glad you guys got that under control. Thank you. And of course, thank you for all you guys do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last on the agenda, we have approval for payroll of vouchers, but Clerk Brooke wanted to let everybody know about an addition that we made for changes on this.
Oh, right. So In your packet, every board meeting, there is a payroll and vouchers report. And along the themes that Supervisor Walsh was mentioning, I wanted to let you know and those watching that we're always building the finance page and adding more content and information to have it easily accessible. Something that was just recently added is there is another drop-down for the payroll and voucher reports. So they're on the finance page. You see at the bottom, payroll and vouchers, click on it, and they come up. Previously, to access the information, you would have had to go on to the particular board meeting and found the packet and pulled it out. So putting it there all in one place in a searchable PDF makes it much more accessible and available to anybody that wants to look at it and search through it. So happy to mention that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that change.
Yeah, that's
good.
great.
Yep, the more we can put out there on that finance page, the better. It not only gets other people to get information, but it reduces the need of the staff to give them stuff that should be easily available anyway. So, thank you guys.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Martin.
And so with that, we have had a chance to look at it. Unless there's any changes, I'd look for a motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion by trustee McKee,
Support.
support by trustee Barnett. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we have our motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by clerk Brooks,
Support.
support by trustee Murray. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That does pass. Thank you. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks.